Well, good afternoon. My name's Karen Tems of the Business Network in Central and East Lancashire. Proud to be a sponsor of Business Bites with business leaders in conjunction with Lancashire and GBTV. Today we're chatting with Gary Whitehead of AFT Assist. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well, Karen. How are you?
Absolutely great, thank you. Well, if there was ever a need for business debt reduction agreements, I'm imagining now is probably the time. But before we get into that, please tell me, how did you get started?
Well, my background, I spent 20 years working for Barclays for my sins. I was a corporate manager. My last job was a corporate manager at Preston, lending to small and medium-sized businesses. I left Barclays in 2001 and set up a lending business myself, which did very well up until the financial crisis. And then I was on the receiving end, should we say, of a lender's wrath. And because of the difficulties I experienced through that, I decided to set up a business specifically aimed to help small businesses who get into difficulties with lenders find a better way out than insolvency or the forced sale of assets. And so AFT was born officially in 2014, although I worked doing these sort of agreements for private clients probably for 18 months before that. Right. And what we do is we review the lending that the client's done with, not necessarily a bank, but it could well be with a lot of the secondary lenders, Funding Circle being one that most people will have probably heard of.
Yes.
And so we review the lending to see if there's anything that's been done incorrectly. We look at the financial aspects, the options that the lenders have got for recovery, and then we put a proposal, use all of that to put a proposal to a lender to hopefully justify what we're asking them to do, which in the majority of circumstances is accept less than what they are owed as full and final settlement of the debt.
Right.
So they're not going to do that without good justification. It's not,
absolutely not
something that's easy, but given the right circumstances, it is possible.
I imagine that aside from your excellent technical knowledge, to get both parties to an agreement, then you also have to have a high degree of influential communication style as well, and a lot of trust goes into that. So do you think that was honed from your years within the bank, or is that something that's sort of more that's just a Gary thing, genuinely wanting the best for both parties?
I think it's definitely been honed from 20 years at Barclays. What I would say for banks, I know they've come up for a lot of criticism in recent years. When I joined in the early 80s, it was probably the end of old-style banking, which meant they trained you very, very well. And that stands you in good stead going forward. But this is not about, what we do now is not about bank bashing or lender bashing or anything like that. That's not what it's about. It's about, in effect, trying to find that sensible solution. And as part of that, you do have to understand the lender's position just as much as you have to understand the borrower's position, because the more you can understand the lender's position and both parties, the better deal you can structure that will work. It's like the scenario would be you're trying to find a deal that the borrower can afford and the lender can live with. And hopefully you start when the clients are quite far apart in their expectations, but hopefully you can find some element of common ground, and that's where you can structure a suitable settlement.
So it sounds to me that there's also a fair degree of mediation involved in that process as well.
Yes, it's definitely, you could definitely say there's a bit of mediation. There's also a bit of helping from a pressure relief. It's very stressful when you're in financial difficulty, and if you've got nobody to talk to and turn to, then that pressure can become unbearable, and there's some horrendous stories about people taking their own lives because of debt-related issues. And whereas I can't wave a magic wand and get rid of them immediately. We can help relieve a little bit of that pressure and just tone it down a little bit so it becomes a little bit more manageable as we go through the process. And there's nothing better at the end of the process to ring somebody up and say they've agreed the deal, because you can just feel the weight of the world being lifted off the shoulders of the person at the other end of the phone.
And I imagine that gives you a huge sense of satisfaction that you've been able to help somebody.
Oh, having been through it myself, there's no better feeling than being able to ring somebody up at the end. Yes, okay, we do get well paid for what we do, but there's no better feeling than ringing somebody up who's been under the cosh for months or years, and all of a sudden they can see light at the end of the tunnel, and that's all they're looking for. The problem is when we start, there's no light; it's just black. They don't know where to go.
And I think, actually, from a little bit of personal experience, that when you have been under the cosh for several months, when it does start to lift, that weight on the shoulders, as you put it, you've forgotten quite what normal life is like when you haven't got that weight on your back. So yeah, I admire what you do. And at what point do you feel that it's the right time for businesses to get in touch with you? Because I imagine the sooner the better in terms of the deal that you can help broker for them.
I think you're right, Karen. The earlier the better. The biggest problem we have is people don't like holding the hand up and asking for help generally.
Absolutely
especially
not.
Business people.
We're a proud lot, you see. We're a
absolutely,
proud lot.
Absolutely. And so, it's a lot easier, bizarrely, to find businesses after they've gone into insolvency where we could help the directors who have given a personal guarantee in the same way, to avoid them having to lose personal assets and potentially personally go into insolvency. They're easy to find because they're published in the London Gazette, and we work with a lot of insolvency practitioners. Finding the ones just before, in time where you might be able to save the business, and we have been able to structure lending to give businesses a fighting chance to survive, but that's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So if I've got an ambition, if you like, for the next year, for the couple of years ahead, it's trying to find a way to engage with businesses earlier, rather than after they've got into insolvency. We might not be able to save them, but I say about 1 in 10 perhaps we might be able to save the business. And if we can't save the business, we can then just move straight on to help directors with personal guarantee related issues.
What would you say is your unique selling point at AFT Assist?
The biggest unique selling point we've got is the fact we've come from a lending background.
Right.
If you go to most solicitors who've not got specific financial services divisions, they will probably not understand banking. And it goes back to what I said before: the more you can understand the person, the opposition, if you like, for the sake of a better word, then the better deal you can structure. The person who you're dealing with, whoever it may be, they've got people to answer to, they've got bosses, they've got contracts, they've got bonuses linked to various bits and pieces, and they are people as well. So you've got to understand their particular difficulties, and if you can give them the justification to allow them to go to their boss positively, not negatively, then you're more likely to get the solution that you want. So that's definitely our unique selling point, the fact we're doing this from a lending background.
Brilliant. You said a little earlier that AFT Assist was born in 2014, although you'd been offering a similar service prior to that. How have you found being independent and having your own business? How have you found that different from a large institution? Is that something that you have enjoyed, or are there bits of the old world that you have missed?
I think the biggest eye-opener for me was when I set up the lending business. So that's when I first went out of Barclays and set up a lending business which was just me at the start.
Right.
And I think the biggest issue is all of a sudden you've got nobody to talk to. You can't just ring IT and say, I want, can you fix this for me? Or You can't just ring somebody to get the help that you need, and you've got to learn very quickly how you go about finding, because nobody knows everything. It's having the ability to find out what you need.
Yes.
So that was a big learning curve. I suppose the biggest learning curve for me was when things got difficult in the lending business, and then you realise that the law isn't fair. The law's only fair if you've got money to be able to afford the rich, the very good lawyers and solicitors to be able to fight your corner. And that was probably the biggest eye-opener that I've experienced since leaving Barclays in 2001.
Right.
So setting up AFT in comparison to what I went through before was hopefully a lot easier.
Good. I do know that feeling, though. That resonates with me. The last time I was gainfully employed was in the early 90s, and if I wanted my car changing, I used to get a little memo, and not even an email.
Yeah.
It was a memo: go down to Upper Brook Street and pick your next BMW. I've done a BMW since. It's just a different world, isn't it? But I would never go back. I like to tell
one thing I would say, Karen, is I've never, even when things have been very, very difficult, I've never once thought, I wish I was back at Barclays.
No, me neither. I've been very happily unemployable all century and then some. So yeah, that makes me feel really good. So I've still got that buzz, having had my own businesses since the end of the 90s. What motivates you? What keeps you going in your business?
I think the biggest motivator is helping the people that have got nobody to turn to. That's what really gets me up. That's why I take phone calls at 8 o'clock at night. People are under pressure. Nobody tends to abuse ringing you up out of hours. No. So when they do, there's a good reason. So that's by far the biggest motivator. And I said before, we do get very well paid for what we do, but most of our fees are based on success. We only charge if we succeed.
Right.
And finding somebody to do that in this market is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But that's what the business model has been built upon. We're helping people, but by their very nature are not flush with cash. And so we structure our fees to say we'll take a little bit up front, but the vast majority at the end. And in doing that, we are careful to make sure that the cases that we take on have a realistic chance of success. Unfortunately, we can't help everybody, and sometimes you do have to give people advice that they probably don't want to hear. But looking at insolvency options in certain circumstances is the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, how do you? What kind of personal development do you personally undertake to keep yourself in the know?
There's not sort of the same sort of path as you would be in financial services, which has specific development programs that they have to look at. The issue for us is keeping abreast of banking related matters.
Yeah.
Any changes in legal situations. There have been a lot of banking scandals over the last 10 years, so making sure you're aware of what's going on in the wider banking world as well. And just trying to speak to our solicitors, and if they have got something that is new in relation to a legal case where it's gone to court and the judge has said, this is what I think about this particular issue, making sure we're aware of it. Yeah. A lot harder than being in the legal profession who've got access to all these cases on the computer. But I've got a few friends that hopefully keep me advised of significant ones that are going on.
Yeah, great. And all things financial, it would appear, from right at the outset of your career. So how did you get started at Barclays and financial services in the 80s?
It wasn't the route that you're probably thinking, Karen. I've got to be honest. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to said, "Oh, I've wanted to do this all my life," and it was it's fantastic. But I was doing A levels. I was hoping to take time out after my A levels, so I didn't apply for university. And because I didn't apply for university, my tutor said, well, you've got to do something. Just apply for a job. And because I was doing maths, they said, why don't you apply to a bank? And I did, not because I wanted to do the job, but really to keep them quiet. So I applied to 2 banks, and I got the job with Barclays. And so my year out turned into 2 weeks, and then I started with Barclays, and never managed to get my year out to go travelling. But hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be able to do it again when we think about taking life a little bit easier.
Yeah, well, there you go. Oh, that's no good, is it? Ended up with 2 weeks when you wanted a year out, but hey, it set you up for life. And as you said, it really wasn't the story I was expecting. So how have you spent your time in lockdown? It's very easy to think that people like you might be very busy because, as I said at the outset, if there was ever a time for your help, it's probably now. Has that been the case?
Funnily enough, it's not, Karen, because we've gone through 3 or 4 months, and the analogy it's almost like the truce in World War One, when the 2 sides had the football match in no man's land.
Christmas Eve, or was it Christmas Day?
Christmas Eve. And it's been like that for the last 3 months. Everybody's been very good. Nobody's been chasing debt. Everybody's just been trying to get through it. But at some stage it's going to end, and the fighting will start. And my view is that as things now, people are trying to get the businesses going again. The courts are reopening. People will be chasing debt. From here on in, things will start to get very busy as people and businesses have to deal with the difficulties now going forward. So we've been steady going through it the last 3 months, but in areas helping previous clients with things like Sybil's applications, which is the government loan schemes and things along those lines. The cases we've taken on, apart from one, were all ones that went into insolvency before lockdown. There's only one that's actually gone into insolvency during lockdown. But as I said, I'm hoping it won't be like a tsunami of failures that will come. I'm hoping it won't. But I think there is going to be a significant number from August, probably for 6 to 12 months.
Right. Okay. So that's the word on the street, is it, that it's going to be a good 12 months before things settle down into any
we hope it's quicker. But all the IPs that I speak to, because we get a lot of business from insolvency practitioners, where they're helping the company through the insolvency process, but the director needs help on personal guarantees. I don't know if I've mentioned previously, Karen, but there is something called personal guarantee insurance.
Yes, I've heard of that.
There's only one insurance company in the UK that does that. And when they've got a business that's showing signs of difficulty, they come to us to see if we can help find a better solution or reduce the liability for both the insurers and the clients. And they're of the same opinion that from August onwards, they will also likely see an increase in the numbers of failures. Of course, we'd like to be busy, but it's getting that balance between the benefits for the wider economy and being selfish in benefits for us. So you're busy, but not very busy.
Yeah. And so how do you de-stress? What do you like to do outside of the business?
I think since I gave up football because of knee-related
issues. So you mean football gave you up?
Yes. The mind wants to do things that the body couldn't deliver on, Karen.
I know that feeling.
So probably about 5 years ago, I took up cycling and love it now. Try and get out as often as I can. Time is obviously the big factor on that. But it's it's great to get out on the bike in the fresh air. It's good thinking time. It clears your mind. So that's probably the biggest thing I do to de-stress now. And I'd love to do more of it, but I don't think I will be able to do more for the in the short term anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things that within the business network, a lot of our members are very keen cyclists. And I suppose that if I got my act together, we should have some sponsored T-shirts, shouldn't we? The business network, Central and East Lancashire, mammals. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Those, unfortunately.
What advice would you give somebody who was starting up right now, given that you know exactly how you help people when it doesn't quite go to plan? What would be up there?
I think you've got research is crucial. Research what you want to do.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I would say, don't be afraid of failure.
Yeah.
Because if you're afraid of failure, you will not do anything. When I left Barclays, I said to myself, I would rather try and fail than look back for the rest of my life thinking, what if I'd have done something then?
Yeah.
And so it's a reality of life. As we get older, we get more averse to failure. It's like when you're a child, you fall over trying to walk and you get up and you have another go. But when you get older, you don't like falling down.
No.
And so if you do your research, if you believe in what you do, then don't be afraid to try it. And
That's
don't be afraid. If things don't quite go as envisaged, you will be able to pick yourself up and either do that again or find something else. So
stay with it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to fall. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I like that. It's not the falling down, is it? It's the bouncing back. How quickly you do that.
Yes, but if you don't try because you're worried about falling down, you'll never get anywhere.
No, that's true. That's true. Great. So, to Gary Whitehead, gamekeeper turned poacher. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think that's quite a good analogy.
Fantastic. How do people find you? If they need to talk to you, if they need to refer one of their contacts or one of their suppliers to you, how do they find you?
They can find us via the website, which is aftassist.com. We get introductions from a wide range of accountants and solicitors, but by all means, they can just ring me. If they search on AFT, they'll get the number, and they can drop me an email via the website or ring me on the number. There's also a mobile, my own mobile, and there's no issue for them to ring me on that. The number's 0776416 7530, and that's always available as long as people don't ring me at 12 o'clock at night. I will normally answer the phone.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you again today, Gary. And thank you for sharing your background with us and indeed how you want to take the business forward. So thank you very much indeed.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks, Karen.
Excellent.